Welcome into this week's On the Spot. I'm Tony Mulvey, joined on the phone by Kevin Hill. Kevin, where are your Harry Carey glasses?
They are somewhere around here. I don't have them. No, right here they are. So I'll put these on just for you, Tony.
Awesome. Sweet. Well, we're going to talk a little about the Pareto effect. And Kevin, this is one of your favorite things to talk about. You talked about it earlier this week in the Daily Watch. Maybe give a breakdown of what that is and how that affects and like how that impacts the freight market.
Yeah, Pareto is it's an old law. I forget who was Pareto, but when it happened, I don't know. But it's like in all systems, the top 20% generate 80% of the results. So if you look at any sales floor, this is one of the reasons why I like it. I look at a sales floor, look at a business. Their top 20 customers are going to produce 80% of the revenue. The other 80% of the customers are going to produce 20%. So it really gives you an idea of where to allocate your resources. So this, business systems, natural systems, it's something that no matter what system you look at, whether it's biology or anything, you always come back to roughly these same numbers.
Yeah, and I mean, it's that way. I mean, I think if you look at the Wikipedia page about it, it talks about the economy breaks down that way too. Top 20% have 80% of the income, right? So you're seeing it. Mm-hmm. The freight market's not that. I mean, what you're seeing is you don't see that level, right? But you see the top 20 freight markets, top 25% of the freight, or top 25 markets, right, control like 50% of the freight. And we'll bring up here our outbound tender market share, this map, and you can see just how big those markets are. So in this map, you'll see the smaller number, so not that percent that you see, that percent change, but the number underneath it is the percent of market share that each market has. And you can see how big just these first few markets are. Even the top 5 have like 10 or 11% of the total market, if not more.
Yeah, so it's interesting. You go into the top 20%, and the top 20% of that top 20% generates 80% of those results. So what we find is the top 25 of the 135 freight markets that we track here in Sonar generate roughly 54% of the outbound freight volumes. And that's a little, it's concentrated even a little bit more than that, because if we throw back the tree map again and look at those largest markets, we'll see that there's Ontario, California, and LA, California. Now, those are two separate freight markets, but you could lump those into together on a Southern California market. You have Joliet and Chicago. You have Dallas, and then a smaller market of Fort Worth, but it's still that same DFW complex. So if you start lumping those in, it becomes even more concentrated than that.
Yeah, for sure. And so this map, or this tree map, it's on a yearly basis. This one's comparing year over year change in that outbound tender market share. I think what's interesting in it, though, and kind of how it's played out, I mean, you look at those big markets, they've lost some market share. If somebody loses market share, it means others are gaining it. And you look, it's right at that, it's still in that top 25, but it's your Phoenix, it's just those surrounding markets of these major markets that are growing. And I don't think that's really a surprise when you start to look at how the freight market's evolved. You start looking at some of this warehousing data. I mean, Prologis, perfect example. You look at where they're sold out in some of these major markets, but then they're also sold out in some of these surrounding markets. I think Phoenix is, it's like 2% of their total U.S. footprint, but it's 100% leased out. So they have no available space. And I think that's what's interesting when you start looking at some of these market share changes.
It's really interesting. If you look at the next 25, right? So markets 26 through 50, what I call mid-market freight markets, that generates 23%. So about half as much as the top 25, but you take those two together, there's 50 markets out of 135, so roughly 30% or a third, maybe a little bit above a third, and you're looking at 80% of the freight outbound freight volume. So not that 20/80 and 20/80 is a general rule of thumb, but we're very close to that 20/80 rule and I bet you if we did the top 12 after that, right, number 26 through 35, that's going to account for most of that 23% because of the power law.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we'll move on to this next couple charts real quick, just to kind of touch on them. First one's going to be the NTI on a seasonal chart. You kind of saw the softness in July, right? You look at that, the white line 2022, green line 2021, blue line 2020, and then orange line 2019. You see similar trend to what we saw in 2021 and 2019, 2020 being the anomaly. Not really a surprise here when you start to hear some of these earnings releases and what they're talking about moving forward into Q3. They're seeing a softening spot market, and I don't think that's a surprise. Kevin, I'll ask you this. Where do you think we go from here? I mean, do you think we still have further to fall with the spot rates?
I do. I think we do have further fall. It depends on the recession, economic output. Last hour, I was talking to Anthony and Michael Vincent about, and Anthony was mentioning, a lot of survey data from the Fed and from industrial production, et cetera, that have kind of forward-looking indexes or turning negative. And then I think DTS, diesel has maybe peaked. Hopefully it's peaked. And if those come down to the chart that we just showed, including fuel, that's going to come down, right? Because line haul has been plummeting. It's the NTI, including fuel, is elevated a little bit, because of fuel prices. If that evaporates and those come down to $4 a gallon, you're going to see, even softening market than we're seeing right now. And we're going to, it feels more like 2019 than it does 2020 or 2021 to me.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's all the time we have for this week's On the Spot. Thank you, Kevin, for joining me. Right now, we'll take a quick break and we'll be back with more Freight Waves Now.